Let the public in. As soon as the screen share goes down, then you can start the meeting.
For board and commission interviews, will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Vice Mayor Burt.
Here.
Councilmember Cormack. Here. Mayor Du Bois.
Here.
Councilmember Philsett.
Here.
Councilmember Koo. Here. Councilmember Stone.
Here.
Councilmember Tanaka.
Here.
For the record, all present.
Great. So tonight we're doing mostly Parks and Recs interviews and one PTC. And just a reminder for Parks and Rec, I think we have 3 open positions plus 1 partial position, so 4 openings. And we're going to start tonight with Claire Elliott, who is on Zoom. Claire, I'm going to promote you to panelist. So if you want to, you should be able to turn your camera on. And basically, these are 10-minute interviews, and I'll give you a minute or 2 to introduce yourself, and then we'll start to ask you questions.
Okay, I don't see an option for turning on my camera yet. I just see the mute unmute button.
Yeah, I don't see one either. Maybe your camera's not working.
Oh, I just had a Zoom meeting with somebody else, but that's okay. You can look at the still picture of me. I'd like to be able to see.
Yep. So why don't we go ahead and why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
So my name is Claire Elliott, and I'm a longtime resident over 20 years at the Ventura neighborhood in Palo Alto. And I had a long interest in civic engagement. When I moved to Palo Alto, I was part of the Leadership Mid-Peninsula program and learned a lot from that. But it was also about the time I was segueing from working for the federal government and for consulting companies to a less well-paying nonprofit career. And so I did not have a lot of time because I ended up working full-time and having children in order to make ends meet. But I've enjoyed working with the city of Palo Alto, both in a 3-year part-time job working for Phil Bobel at the sewage treatment plant, and then also as a partner with Grassroots Ecology, where I work now. I'm cut back to about 10 hours a week, but I have a long time experience and education in environmental science, and I've been working in ecological restoration, but I'm also very interested in the human aspects of park use. And I'd love to see more multi-generational use of the park and more education as to the history of the land and the people that came before the European settlers arrived. So I'm delighted to be here, and I'm looking forward to questions.
Great, thank you. Any council members? So I'll ask a quick question. So you talked a lot about parks, and do you have any thoughts on the recreation part of it? And one of the things I think the city's been looking at for some time is a city-owned gym. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I have enjoyed, as a previous resident of Menlo Park, the use of the Burgess Park gym. I've taken classes through Coverly and used the Rinconada pool, which are city-owned facilities, but I hadn't heard about the potential for the city to own an actual workout gym. I think it's the timing would be challenging because of COVID. Hopefully we'll be through this soon. But I'm a member of the JCC and am not going. I'm doing virtual classes. So I think, right now it would be a little bit of a challenge to get that off the ground. But I have been trying to learn more about the other recreational opportunities. I have friends who've been trying to talk me into trying out pickleball. And one of my interests being multi-generational activities, I've been curious if there's any programs for seniors and children to play pickleball together. And so that would be something I'd be interested in learning more about.
Okay, thank you. Yep, Pat.
Thanks, Claire, and thanks for applying. to this position. Can you talk a little bit more about what you think are the opportunities for even greater restoration up at Foothills Park, since we have now rechristened it as a nature preserve?
Oh, well, yes, I have a lot of ideas about that. One of the ones that I know there is some, at least studies being put into place to figure out what it would take to restore the Buckeye Creek through the park so that it's not a straight channel that's incised and not providing the same value as far as feeding the groundwater table, even through Wild Horse Valley. It'd be lovely. And I understand that there's challenges there because of the infrastructure that's under the ground there. But talking to old timers like the Olmsteads who worked up there for years, they remember when there were a lot more plants that relied on marsh type hydrology because there was so much more infiltration from that creek before it was put in a straight, it was channelized instead of being in its sinuous pattern that it should be in. So that's my main thing, as well as continuing to remove invasive species from the park so that we have more of the plants that co-evolved with the wildlife there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Allison.
Good evening, Miss Elliott. Thanks so much for applying. What sorts of recreational opportunities would you like to see at Cubberley Community Center if it's redeveloped?
Well, as I say, I have taken a Pilates class there before, and I'd love to see more of that. I was through Foothills, it's through Foothill College. So I am not clear as to whether you're talking about actually redeveloping in the form of taking down the buildings and putting up new ones. But I think there's definitely room for more opportunities for seniors. I took my parents to a senior activity there, and it was entirely Chinese speaking, which they had been studying for 60 years, but in their 90s, they were no longer adequate to speaking at the rate language was going there. So more opportunities for people to meet in the community, as well as, I could foresee gym type facilities would be really a nice thing to have there.
Okay, thank you.
Greer.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, Claire. Thanks for
Hi.
taking the time to apply. Kind of a two-part question for you. One, what do you see as the biggest challenge or opportunity for the PRC, and how do you envision yourself as a single member on the body being able to help move or drive that issue forward?
Well, I think one of the challenges is the multiple demands on the park system and the need for expanding them in certain neighborhoods where there's less park land. And it's I'm sure very challenging because of the cost of land in Palo Alto, and also the variety of interests and what the land should be used for. But as far as my own personal role, I'm going to believe I'm a good team player and would like to participate as a good, thoughtful listener, as well as bringing ideas forth. But I believe that there's a lot of room for making use of spaces like parking lots that are underutilized, and trying to improve opportunities in maybe non-traditional sections of the community for recreation and for nature as well. So adding more pocket parks and places for the community to meet, and smaller scale recreational opportunities, perhaps like the pickleball courts, but in scattered throughout instead of in the larger park, more isolated parks, because I believe a lot more people are going to need to be close to home.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate the creative thinking there.
What's your favorite city park?
Oh, Well, I'm very fond of Bowl Park. I spend a lot of time there with the Native Garden Committee and working on the native garden, but also having the open stretch of Matadero Creek. And it's also within walking distance of my house. So I'd say Bowl Park.
It's a good choice. Any other questions? Go ahead.
So Claire, can you share with us a little bit about your background with in the city and was it before that with the EPA Region 9?
Yes, in fact, I was with Region 9, Pat, when I first met you, when I was on the South Bay Pollution Prevention Task Force. We were working on the pollution prevention for metal finishers, and Pat was a wonderful partner in helping get people educated about how to prevent pollution. But yeah, I was there, and then I worked for a couple consulting companies and left to have a baby, and then ended up working with the city of Palo Alto for 3 years as a, I think it was called management specialist.
Your 1 minute warning. Sorry, we'll adjust
That's
that.
okay. So I don't know if I answered Pat's question. I'm sorry. But as far as the timing, when I worked for the city was the last job I had in government, and then I moved to nonprofit, worked for Hidden Villa and Actera and Grassroots Ecology. So I guess is it my turn to just wrap up?
Sure, you have a few seconds left.
Okay. Well, I appreciate all of your time. Thank you, council members and mayor. I would like to, participate as I can. If it works out for me to be on the commission, I'd like to help both with improving the parks for humans and for wildlife. So thank you for your time this evening.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for applying.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. So we're going to go on to our next candidate, who I believe is here, is Annie Carl. You can either go to there, you can sit over here, whatever's more comfortable. Usually when it wasn't COVID, we didn't do this so formally up here. So you probably saw how it works. If you just want to introduce yourself and why you're interested, and then we'll start to ask you questions.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Annie Carl. I'm the liaison at Rinconada Community Garden for 6 years already. And that's why I apply to help a little bit more the parks and recreation. And that's it. I'm a little bit nervous. I wasn't expecting this. I'm sorry.
Don't be nervous.
Okay. My experience in the parks, it's been working with the 3 department, also with Catherine Borquin. She retired recently, but with her and doing a lot of stuff related to the community garden. Actually, it's kind of a full-time job because it's 180 people in the community garden, and I kind of have emails all like every day, and I love doing that. It's I love taking care of the park and have everything in good shape all the time. Yeah.
Okay. Council members, Pat.
Great, thank you. And thanks for that work on the community gardens. I just want to say that it's not only a community benefit for those who have the gardens, it's for all the people who enjoy them. We live not too far away and don't have a garden there, but it's one of our favorite walks is to just go through there and appreciate what everybody else is doing. So can you share with us some of your thoughts about what needs or improvements we might need to make in our community in parks and open space and recreation?
Well, I have to say that I love the parks here. I don't see a big changes, but one thing that I heard on one of the last meetings were about the kids and the skate park. And I felt like it was a really interesting thing that was going on. I was moved by the kids talking about the need to have this redo it and how they were using Mellow Park instead of here. And I think that moved me, and that would be something good to have complete in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Allison.
Hello, Ms. Carl. Welcome. Thank you very much for being here tonight. And I see you have a lot of gardening experience on your background here. And thanks for mentioning the skate park. Appreciate that.
Okay.
My question is about Cubberley Community Center, which we may be redeveloping at some point. What sorts of recreation opportunities are you interested in seeing at Cubberley when we redevelop it?
Well, my youngest daughter, she used to have ballet classes over there. So that one thing that was that I love to see there, continue to have the dance classes. And also I used to go for English class because I'm from Brazil, so my first language is Portuguese.
Well,
so,
your English is far better than my Portuguese.
well, thank you. And that was something that I used to enjoy. Also, the classes that were offered over there. And I heard also about some technology, some kids doing some printing stuff, printing technologies. I'm sorry, I don't remember
No, you're
exactly.
right. It's a makerspace.
Yeah, makerspace was really a good thing also for kids to do after school or things like that. Yeah, my daughter, they love to go to piazzas, and they hang out a lot behind the park. So it's a place that the kids really use a lot. So maybe having more interesting things for them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Greer.
Thanks, Tom. Let's see. Well, hi, Annie. Thanks for applying.
Hi, thank you.
I heard you talking about the skate park, and in your last answer to Councilmember Cormack, you talked a lot about kids as well. And I think that's kind of one of the interesting parts about the PRC is that it really creates an opportunity for closer kind of connection and partnership with the youth in the community. Do you have any ideas on how the PRC might channel the youth voice a little more and try to engage the youth in creating programs for them and really kind of incorporating their feedback into that?
I don't have any idea right now at the moment, but I think giving them a space to be there, and also I think the children's theater also had some kind of council or something that the kids would participate. I'm not really sure how to respond to your question right away. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I put you on the spot with a very specific question, but I appreciate hearing kind of your passion in that area. And so just was curious if you had any specific thoughts, but thank you.
So I'm just curious. So if you were on the Parks and Recs Commission, you'd be looking at we have a master parks plan, and we have a lot of more desires than money, probably. So you mentioned the skate park. People want more dog parks. There's been this idea of a gym in the city for a long time. More community gardens, even new parks themselves. How would you think about prioritizing all these different wishes? Like you said, people come and talk, and it can affect your emotions, but we have to prioritize them on different things. So how would you do that?
I would, of course, prioritize the things that are in bad shape, like the ones that are older or need really taking care of. Yeah, that's my thought about that.
Okay, thank you. So there's just a little bit of time left. If you want to just kind of, actually, I have one more question for you. So I didn't know, is there an official organization behind the community gardens? When you said you're a liaison, is there somebody assigned to each community garden in town?
Yes. We have each community garden has a liaison that take care of it. And in the case of Rinconada, I am the one in charge, and I have another person that I invited to help me out too. So she's a liaison too. And we are responsible for showing the plots and
Is this
resolving.
through the city or through the garden club? Like, I'm just curious how it's organized.
No, through the city.
Yeah.
So the city provides us all the paperwork, and we assign people. And basically, we are responsible for all the communication between the gardeners and the city. But there are some parts of the work that the city is responsible, like terminations and in charging also the plots and also organizing the roster and the maps.
Okay.
Yes.
So like you said, there's just a little bit of time if you want to just conclude.
One thing that I would love to see more in the city, it's happening little by little with Juanita, the lady that gets empty spaces around the city, and she do native gardens. So at Rinconada, we used to have a lot of space around that was neglected. And we started with the gardeners helping to redo all the outside area. And it was something that everybody was super happy. And we arranged like a lot of money and a little bit of time to buy native plants and plant it all over the area. And we focus on the monarch's butterfly also. And we had a lot of attention from the media recently. I don't know if you guys saw, but because of one of research that I helped with the University of Washington State, and it was all over the media, the monarchs breeding during the winter in Palo Alto. Yes.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you for applying.
Okay.
10 minutes goes fast.
Okay. Thank you.
Our next candidate is Nellis Freeman Jr. Hi, welcome. So,
Hey, thank you.
yeah, I think you saw how we do it. If you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Nellis Freeman. My family's been in Palo Alto. So we moved here in 1994, so I'm a long-time resident of Palo Alto. My wife at that time was given an opportunity to open up an office for the company that she worked for, and I was actually fortunate enough to land a position with a law firm that happened to be located in Palo Alto. So I came here a little bit earlier than she did, and as she would come here, we would take a look at a lot of different locations, a lot of different houses that were available in the peninsula. And the one thing that excited us about Palo Alto was the canopy of trees, the neighborhood parks where my kids, who were 2 and 7 at the time, really became enamored with the different parks, which we gave them an opportunity to play around with those. So that, I think, besides the neighborhood parks and just the schools system here in Palo Alto, just really made a difference on us selecting Palo Alto as a place to live. And so this, with that being said, what this does is gives me an opportunity to contribute to that, the long-term enhancements of our parks and communities, especially as, a lot of the people that have become friends with over the years, we're getting older, our kids have moved out, but we have grandkids. And so we want to make sure that that those community parks remain sort of viable as they are today.
Okay, thank you. Pat?
Well, good evening.
Good, thank you.
So can you share with us any thoughts you have about undermet needs in parks or recreation in the city?
Well, I think one of the things, I mean, my kids definitely took full advantage of all of the parks, from playing sports. And I myself used to be an avid racquetball player before my knees gave out on me. But I remember just being able to go to Mitchell Park and play through all, racquetball. So and then, of course, the tennis courts and the different playground equipment that was available to my kids. So I've kind of watched all of that over the course of the years, how new equipment has been added, and keeping in mind the safety of our kids and some of the challenges I think that, the Park and Recreation Commission has been dealing with is trying to balance between taking care of our senior citizens and people like myself who've gotten older, our kids have moved away, but also making sure that there's recreational type of activities in those parks, especially the neighborhood parks. I mean, and that's the one thing that gravitated us here. And I think it's the same thing when I talked to a lot of my friends, the fact that everything is within walking distance, where you live. And, we're starting to see a lot of the different demographics change with the fact that, the empty nesters and people now have pets. A lot of the younger families are now moving into Palo Alto. So how do we strike a balance between maintaining the safety for our senior citizens and our people who have families, people who have pets who want to be able to have them sort of run free? There's a lot to be said about that. And people don't want to necessarily have to travel a long distance, let's say, to give their dogs or animals the freedom that they want. But at the same time, these parents want to be able to take advantage of letting their kids utilize the parks in a safe environment. So we have to strike that balance, I think.
Allison?
Good evening, Mr. Freeman. Thank you so much for applying and coming this evening.
Thank you. Good. Thank you.
And thank you for your service. We celebrated Veterans Day
Thank you.
last week, and I see that you're a retired member of the Navy.
Thank you.
My question is about Cubberley, and you might have heard it because I saw you here in the chambers earlier. I'm going to say when instead of if, when we redevelop Cubberley, what sorts of recreational opportunities would you like to see there for the community?
Yeah, that's another place where I myself have taken advantage of some of the classes that have been offered there. Still trying to improve my Spanish skills, which seems to be a challenge. I've taken 3 or 4 classes in Spanish there. But my kids I know that played, I would like to see the gymnasium there actually become one that we as a city would be proud to have. But again, maintaining the safety and making sure that we're providing good services that our citizens, that our stakeholders here want to be able to take advantage of it. So I would like to see, that becomes sort of an environment that that we as Palo Altans would be proud to go to and be proud to take our families and friends from out of the area to be able to share what we have to offer the city.
Thank you.
Eric?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for applying for this and coming tonight.
Thank you.
So I think you nailed it. Is how do we strike the balance between sort of all the different needs for uses and services for the parks and recreation facilities, given sort of finite resources and land and money and all that kind of stuff. So if you could focus on one thing, what one thing would you do to expand, and why that?
Eric, I think we lost you there. If you want to repeat that question.
Sorry. What one thing would you tackle first, if you could, and why that one?
I'll tell you what, one of the things I hear a lot, and I have a, a lot of friends who have pets. I myself don't have a pet, but that seems to be a big issue. People wanting to take advantage of the parks. At the same time, young families who also want to be able to take advantage of those parks. So I think we need to figure out how can we balance that, especially the neighborhood parks. And we have to really look deep, I guess, at it. And, maybe you can do something like a time schedule. But you have to sort of be careful with that too. What do you do about the people who are going to abuse that? If you say, hey, your pet can run around between, I don't know, 7 to 8 or 8 to 9 or whatever it might be, but how do you ensure that you're striking a balance? I mean, who's responsible for that type of effort? But I think, with our changing demographics here in Palo Alto, we really have to kind of focus on how can we strike that balance to give people what they, and it's going to be a challenge, but I think maybe reaching out to people and having them come up with some sort of suggestions that we as a commission can look into. You're probably not going to have a consensus. I mean, everyone's going to probably want everything. So we have to kind of work, how can we give a little bit more than what people have now? And, maybe over time, and if the system starts to get abused, then, it's one of the things we have to adjust as time goes on.
So I'll ask you a variation of the question I asked earlier. So if you were on the Parks Commission and you have all these people coming here and asking for all these different things, I guess how would you work with the other Parks Commissioners to prioritize things? And, how have you worked in groups in the past?
Yeah, I think my experience as a project manager, managing some very complex projects, and if you look at my experience, I've worked at a lot of some pretty high-tech law firms here in Palo Alto, and so one of the that's a kind of I used to say, it's people ask me, how do you manage technology in law firms? It's like managing unrealistic expectations. So you have to figure out how do you listen to people. First of all, you have to listen to people and understand the passion that they are presenting to you. And I think by listening, you were able to key in on certain things that they might say that you can kind of focus on. I used to call it, looking for that low-hanging fruit. And if you can focus on that low-hanging fruit, then you can start sort of wrapping it up where you're giving people what they want. But people at the end of the day, people want to be listened to and they want to be heard. And I think that starts the process right there.
Yeah. So just a few seconds left if you want to do a little summation.
But sure. I think I'm at a position. I want to be able to bring to the commission a lot of my experience that I've had in the working environment as a project manager, and also managing very large groups of people, and that I think my experience, my ability to analyze the situation, and to help build a consensus, I think would make me a valuable member of the commission. I think at this point, we're looking for ways in which I can give back, and I think this is one of the ways I've selected to do that.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity.
Let's see, our next person is Evie Klein. I think she's online. Evie, you should be able to turn on your camera as well if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, let me just see if I can get my camera going. 1 second.
Yeah, I don't see your camera either, but why don't we just go ahead?
Okay, yeah, I'll go ahead. Let me go ahead and start. I'll see if I can sort it out on Zoom. Okay, yeah, hi. So I'm Evie Klein. I am a longtime resident of Palo Alto. I was actually born in Palo Alto, Stanford University, and I grew up nearby. And I've been a resident as an adult since 1999. I've worked at I work locally as well. I work at the Palo Alto VA. I've been there since 2000. And I am fortunate in that I was able to raise my children here. I was able to take advantage of many of the options that we had here in Palo Alto, as far as going to our neighborhood parks, utilizing our neighborhood parks, going through, utilizing all the recreation resources that we have here. In fact, I was noticing this morning that I was drinking my morning coffee out of a mug that I made at the ceramic studio at the Palo Alto Art Center probably about 20 years ago. And I really, well now, especially since the pandemic, but even before then, I've really taken a lot of opportunities to use our outdoor spaces and come to appreciate them even more. And my children are now in college, but I'm a dog owner and regularly frequent our neighborhood parks, Mitchell Park, Hoover Park, on a regular basis, probably close to every day. And I also use our bike boulevard as I usually commute by bike to work. And so, and I hike every weekend as well. So I'm a frequent end user of Parks and Rec opportunities and resources here in Palo Alto. So I'm at a point in my life where I really would love to, I want to get back to this community that I really love, and especially help work for making our open spaces, making our parks, making our recreation really available and accessible to everyone who wants to use them.
Great, thank you. Pat, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, thanks. And when I was reviewing your application, you talked about something that we haven't discussed very much, which is how to increase the interest in our parks and recreation areas and use of them. And I see a couple of the ideas you put out there, but I thought that was first a really noteworthy perspective. We've all been talking about how do we provide even more parks and rec services, but we really haven't been talking about how to get people to appreciate them more. So can you share a little bit more about that and your thoughts on it?
Sure. I mean, I think one thing to look at is who the use of our spaces, who's using them, and are there any spaces that are actually underutilized and why? And if they tend to be more in certain neighborhoods, and looking at the accessibility of those areas. So, I mean, I think it depends on who we're trying to reach. I mean, I think younger people, youth, and young adults, I think, and middle-aged adults like myself, you know, are very responsive to social media. That's actually how I heard about this position. And I think utilizing city Twitter, utilizing Facebook, utilizing other social media that's available to highlight some of these snapshots of some really beautiful and really unique spaces that we have here. That would be one way to get the word out. I mean, I think you want accessibility, and you have to focus on the outreach so that people know what's out there and know to utilize it. So and I was actually reviewing some of the parks in Palo Alto. I was like, oh, I'm not sure I've been to that one. And there was one open space that I hike really regularly, but I don't think I'd been there before. I was like, okay, well, you know, if I'd gone and done the research, yeah, I would have found it, but I didn't see it. So, I think those are some ways.
Thank you.
Allison?
I want to start by thanking our city clerk office for using social media to find new applicants. So let's just add that. Yeah. Good evening, Ms. Klein. Thank you for applying.
Thank you.
Thanks for your service to our veterans and for your comments about Foothills Now Nature Preserve. And my question is about Cubberley. So when we redevelop Cubberley, notice I said when, not if. I'm getting better as the evening goes on. What sorts of recreational opportunities would you like to see us provide there?
I mean, I think
Here.
We lose her?
Oh, now we've got your video, but we can't hear you, Ms. Klein.
okay.
Okay,
How's that?
great. Well, hello, and
Hello.
if you
It's
can
much
just
better if you can see someone in person.
Yeah. Now, if you can just restart your answer, we'll be all set.
Of course, Cubberley. Well, Cubberley is, I've seen the whole iteration with it being a temporary space for the library, being a temporary space for the Junior Museum and Zoo. I've taken my kids to basketball league there, basketball classes, and various other things. I mean, there are so many different opportunities, but I think having a recreational physical fitness area and utilizing that gym, I think, is something that the city could really benefit from. And also, I'm not sure how much of it is being used for performances now, particularly post-COVID, but I think that that's another opportunity that the city would really benefit from, and it would also draw interest from other areas too.
Thanks so much.
Eric?
Good evening, and thank you very much for applying and joining us here tonight.
Of course.
If you could pick one thing in our parks and recreation purview to expand or change or improve, what would you pick, and why that one?
I think looking at, I think if we wanted something very, very granular, very, very concrete, I would say accessibility in terms of signage. Like, I think Arrested or Preserve is a great example of just a beautiful local close by space that where the trails are, and a really beautiful nature center and other things. But the signage, for example, is really actually pretty bad. That could be improved upon quite a bit, and even create, I don't know how much opportunity there is to expand the parking, but that's also a difficult area to get to by car or to be at. But the trails are not, they're well marked, but they're not, the signs aren't clear, and the mile markers are. So that's a very specific concrete example. But I think in general, my interest has to do with access and inclusivity. So making sure that our spaces are available to everyone, regardless of socioeconomic status, regardless of ability, regardless of age. And some ways you can do that, very tangible ways like signage, and I don't know the extent to which everything is ADA accessible, but that's one area that I'm particularly interested in.
Thank you.
So we have just about 1 minute left. Greer, if you have a short question.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I'll make it short. Hi, Evie. Thanks for taking the time to apply. And I want to follow up on Councilmember Filseth's question, kind of related. I appreciate your concern of accessibility. How would you, as one member of a 7-member body, kind of work to try to promote those really good goals? I would probably start with utilization and take a look at what is being utilized, and if it's a matter of, if it is a matter, for example, of physical accessibility, I think using surveys for Palo Alto residents is a great way to get some information. And I'm very familiar with working with teams and working in my position as a director of Western Blind Rehab Center. I work with quite a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders who have a lot of ideas about, how to move things forward for our veterans. And
it's a constant negotiation. But yeah, I mean, finding out what this is a commission that exists for the Palo Alto residents and making our spaces open and as usable and well utilized for everyone. Did I answer your question?
Yes, great. Thank you.
Well, 10 minutes goes very fast, so we're at the end of the interview. Thank you very much for applying.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay, our next speaker is Shawnee Kleinhaus. And Shawnee, you should be able to turn on your camera now.
Mr. Mayor, just a point of order. Did you want to take public comment?
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. I keep forgetting. I did skip over public comment. So Shawnee, if you could hang on 1 second. If any members of the public would like to speak to an item not on the agenda, now's the time. Looks like we have one speaker, Aaron James.
Good evening. I was at the Human Relations Commission's meeting on the 18th last Thursday, and then I sent you all a letter, and I'm just going to read it. The Palo Alto HRC proposed at last night's meeting to have the local FBI agents lecture community members on hate crimes. The FBI has a long and vile history of hate crimes against Black citizens and Black activists dating back to the inception of the FBI. The FBI continues to this day in its efforts to disrupt the Black Lives Matter movement and other Black liberation struggles. The HRC should not bring the FBI to town to lecture community members on hate crimes till the FBI pays reparations for its past crimes against African Americans and African American activist organizations. And furthermore, agrees to stop, that's not in my letter, this despicable behavior and activity against Black citizens in our country. I personally oppose the Palo Alto Human Relations Commission's proposal to have the FBI members lecture members of our community on hate crimes until the FBI publicly admits to its own hate crimes and pays appropriate reparations for these crimes. Please join me in asking the Palo Alto HRC not bring the FBI into our town. And then I attached an article by Mike German titled, the former FBI agent himself, "The FBI has a history of targeting Black activists that's still true today." So that's that issue. I hope that you'll support me there. The next one is something that I've been trying, and I see Dave Price has an extensive piece on how slow it is sometimes to get the public's right to know. He starts out in his op-ed today, November 22nd, saying the public has a right to know how its money is spent. So I've been asking City Manager Shikata to give me the budget for the Palo Alto Canine Unit, the total amount, not a little bit of an obfuscated answer. So Ed, I would appreciate if you would be kind enough to answer my question. What is the annual total budget for our canine unit every year? So the public can have input on it. They may want to keep the canine unit exactly as it is, even if I might disagree with that. So that's one issue. And then again, Ed, the way I read your letter, your response to my request for whether or not the Pearson investigation is going to be released is, well, it's going to go along with distributing it with existing channels. My argument is that the existing channel means that it is part of now what the independent auditor would be looking at. So we should have the release of the Pearson investigation. But really, it's as simple as this. Either yes, we're going to do it, or no, we're not. So Ed, come on with those two things for me, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our second and last speaker is David Cole. David?
Excuse me, Mayor and City Council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to say congratulations and thank you for a wonderful bridge opening ceremony on this last Saturday. What a gorgeous day and a final to getting that bridge finally built. I would like to add one more quote to all the quotes that were there, from Neil Young to Winston Churchill. Two quotes that actually came from Yosemite and were very good. But the fourth one, to wrap it all up, would be that one from the Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you can get what you need. And I'd like to have the city council think about this and take that into real action on almost anything that comes before the council, especially when it's related to climate change. We really need to work, cut through the process here and get what we need, not what we want, because that's sometimes a consensus process that goes on for decades. And we do need consensus on things, but we need to get to what we need. So thank you so much for such a wonderful ceremony. I look forward to crossing that bridge many, many times. And thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you. So we'll get back to our interviews already in progress. Shani, you're up, and we'll restart the clock if we can.
Good evening, Mayor Du Bois and council members. I've been a Palo Alto resident for over 20 years. I live in South Palo Alto near Ramos Park. I have a PhD in ecology from UC Davis and have been an environmental advocate with Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society for about a decade now. I have a deep understanding of biology and ecology, as well as policy, planning, meeting processes, and CEQA. I've worked in Palo Alto and other communities. I'm a park user. I frequently use both our neighborhood parks and our natural preserves. And as an environmental advocate for Audubon, I work with our other teams on education and outreach to seek grants and to create and implement educational and outreach programs for all ages. The most recent one that I helped start is a 10,000 square feet volunteer-run pollinator garden in Cuesta Park in Mountain View. In Palo Alto, I served on the Citizen Advisory Committee for the comprehensive plan, especially the natural element, but not only. I engaged as a stakeholder in many, many parks plans and parks master plan, urban forest master plan, etc. So because I spent so much time in our Baylands and hills and parks and community centers, I see a lot of challenges. I see a lot of aspirations, and a balance will be needed. And I would like to help find community-based solutions and implement the parks master plan.
Okay, thank you. Council. Allison.
Good evening, Ms. Kleinhaus. It's nice to sort of see you. My question is about Cubberley. So when we redevelop Cubberley at some point in the hopefully near future, what sorts of recreation opportunities would you like to see there?
I would want to see the current kind of programming maintained. That includes a lot of art programs, language programs, programs for young and for old, music, community events, lectures. I would like to see all of that kept. I think a gym there could be greatly improved. The one that is there could be replaced. I think, you know, when I walk there and I see the courtyards, if any of that remains, I think pickleball can be integrated into that, because there's always people wanting more pickleball areas. Events, definitely. Small schools, perhaps. One thing that I go there and I see and I think would be nice, and I know it's a little out of the box, but I'd like to see a tree climbing opportunity for children. Sort of nature in the city that provides exercise opportunities. And definitely there is a need for foreign language speakers to be able to congregate there, and for older people. Sorry about the cat, she loves Zoom.
No worries. Councilmember Phil Seth's cat occasionally joins us as well. Thank you so much for your comprehensive answer.
Lydia.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kleinhaus, for applying. You work a lot with other cities throughout the Bay Area on preserving nature and also increasing habitat value. Can you tell us some of the things that you have already, I mean, besides the one in Cuesta Park, which is a very interesting project, what other things are other cities implementing in order to teach and to encourage increasing natural habitats?
I have to say a lot of the cities are learning from Palo Alto, but
good.
Several cities, they look at green infrastructure and stormwater and looking at that as an opportunity to increase biodiversity as green infrastructure for the city. In San Jose, probably most recent in the news is the Coyote Valley plants that they're looking to down zone or change designation from industrial to agricultural for that purpose. I don't expect Palo Alto to do that. Other programs in Mountain View, they prioritize biodiversity as a guiding principles in their strategic plan. So now they're looking at all the different projects that they're doing in the city with the lens of biodiversity, in additional to all the other lenses and issues that they have to resolve. So that can be public works, and it can be parks, and it can be other things. They also have special programs for burrowing owls, which we actually had plans in for Bixby, but haven't implemented them yet. And in Cupertino, they're looking at a tree master plan now, and also in Mountain View. I think that's kind of it. There is some others, but I think that's gives you some.
Thank you for that. That's very interesting. And do you see involvement of educating and having the younger children or teens get involved in all this learning of nature and biodiversity?
It's a little, it's something that we've been doing with Audubon, which is a lot of bioblitzes. And actually our group supported some bioblitzes in Palo Alto as well, which brings families and young to nature. But it can even be an urban park, and all you look is the underside of the trees, and you discover a bug, and you take a picture of it, and you post it to a project site on iNaturalist. There is ample opportunities to use existing infrastructure, I think, or existing parks, both in the city and our natural parks, to use them as education and to allow a little more flexibility and co-use. You know, I went to a park in San Jose and they had music, just somebody was sitting there, not even organized, but there was a guy playing music and a few people were dancing. I think we need a little more continuity in some of our more urban park, Tai Chi, music, other things that can just happen, you know, and to facilitate that in some way. I would love to see that.
Thank you so much.
Career.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, Shani. Thanks for taking the time to apply. You're clearly very knowledgeable on these issues. I know you've been following issues within Palo Alto and the region for a long time. Is there any particular, I guess, misstep that you think you've observed that the city has done when it comes to anything that would fall under the purview of the Parks and Recreation Commission that you would have done differently, or maybe you have thoughts on how you would correct those as a Parks and Recreation Commissioner?
Well, you're looking for critical input. There are a few things that I would do a little differently, potentially. One thing that I don't know if Parks is the only group that has to look at it, but generally light is a big issue for both human and environmental health. So I would be looking more at how do we address lighting issues, and light, not only pollution, but light in general. There's a lot of evidence of serious harm to humans as well as everything else. The other thing I think with Foothills, you know, when I think about that, it had to be open very quickly. And because of that, I think that some of the expansion of the roads, I would have done a little differently, but I would still do it in just a bit differently in terms of the width of the road and how do you get people to enjoy the park, but potentially and I know it was all done at the last minute and there wasn't a lot of time to really plan it. So I understand what happened.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I apologize for the hardball question, but I knew you were, I was interested to get your more critical take on it. So, and I appreciate that answer.
Well, thank you.
Eric, your hand was up. Do you still have a question?
Sure, if I can. I see we're running out of time here. Shani, thank you very much for applying for this and joining us tonight. So you've got some familiarity with the master plan. So if you could pick one thing out of there that we ought to move on right away, what would it be and why that thing?
I think I would look for the connectivity, for planting more native plants in parks and along the streets and along our creeks to create more of a natural biodiversity web in the city. And that's something that we want to do anyway, a lot of it, it's just that it needs more integration. So if I had to choose one thing, that's probably the first one I would choose.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, and with that, we're pretty much out of time. So thank you.
Thank you for your time.
And then, sorry, I'm trying to demote her. I don't see a way to do that. Maybe the clerk can do that. Our next candidate is Ann Warner-Krebs. And Ann, you're welcome to either sit at the table or stand at the podium.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. It's so interesting to be back in the council chambers after, 18 months. A short thing about me, I've been here in Palo Alto since 1964 and raised 4 children here with my husband. I love this city. I love our parks, and I love all of the programs that Recreation and Community Services do. I have certainly enjoyed serving on the commission for the past 2 terms, and I didn't contemplate asking to renew until I decided that I wasn't quite finished with some of the projects that we are doing with the commission. And so I would love to serve another term. I really believe in people in this city and the power of partnerships with community organizations, with the staff, and with a vision like we saw with the Junior Museum, and be very important to me to continue.
Okay. I'll ask a quick question. So I know you've been sitting here for a while, and we have a lot of candidates. What would you look for in a colleague on the Planning Commission or in the Parks and Rec Commission?
A colleague who, for sure, somebody who would listen and look at all sides of the issue, listen to the community, and be anxious to move the project forward.
Okay, thank you. Allison.
Good evening, Ms. Cribbs. Thank you so much for your service and for reapplying. My question is about Cubberley, and I know you heard it because you've been here. When we redevelop Cubberley, what recreation opportunities would you like to see there?
Well, I would like to see us have an absolutely super gym for room for all sorts of indoor sports. Personally, I'd love to see a pool at Cubberley for South Palo Alto. I think that would be great, but I'd also like to have a facility that serves the entire community and reflects the changes in our community and the kind of sports that people would like to see.
Can you be more specific?
I'm sorry?
Can you be a little more specific? What did you about changing community sports people would like to see?
Well, I think that some of the newer sports, certainly the rock climbing, sports for kids, sports table tennis, the program I think would benefit from some community support, and badminton definitely, and some outdoor sports as well.
Thanks so much.
Lydia?
Thank you for reapplying, Ms. Cripps. Since you are returning, I wanted to find out, with the new handbook, the boards and commission handbook, is there any program or policy in there that you think we should revisit?
Could I ask you to speak a little louder? I'm having trouble understanding through the mask. I'm so sorry.
No. I should have brought it closer. I was just wondering, with having the council put forward the new boards and commission handbook, is there anything in there that the council might want to revisit?
Well, yeah, from our perspective, I think that we would like to make sure we understand the process, especially adding something to the work plan in the middle of the season. We don't know whether we should come to you and ask, or we should go ahead if it is part of the existing work plan. So it was a little confusing to us, and I think we're still a little bit confused, but with all new things, it will work out.
Thank you for that.
Pat?
Okay, great. Thanks, Ann, for applying again and for all of your service. I wanted to ask about how well we promote our park and recreation opportunities that are so great here in the community. And given your background in sports leagues and promotion of all the different senior games, et cetera, are there things that you've seen elsewhere that we should be doing better here in that regard?
Yes, I think so. I think, first of all, to create just a general base of all the volunteers who have to do with sports and recreation would be great, that we could do a direct opt-in mail and have some esprit de corps about our parks and also about programs. We have a lot of different stakeholders and a lot of different community groups, and I think they're pretty segmented, and I'd like to see us all work together. We have a ton of resources in this community in terms of knowledge base, operations, how to do facilities, and we talk a lot about the city budget and how challenging it is in this time. And we want to be aware of that. And also the challenges of staff and being kind of under-resourced in terms of staff. But I think that there's an opportunity to put the community together with the very knowledgeable staff and the city council and really come up with something where we really show support for recreation and parks and funding for those parks.
Thanks.
Greer?
Thanks, Tom. Hi, Ann. Thanks for your service and for reapplying. You alluded to this a little bit in your introductory statement, but I'm curious. I mean, you've served this community, and you're the current chair. What are you hopeful to continue to still accomplish on the PRC? Why do you want to have another term?
Well, I would like very much to have the community come together and agree that we need a new gym in Palo Alto, that we need to do something about the fields with a support group that can help make our fields better. Due to the drought and due to money, they're in not very good shape. And I'd really like to see us not only identify, but move forward on some projects that are capital improvements.
Great, thank you.
And Eric?
Yeah, so thank you very much for your service and for reapplying and being interested in doing this again. I got a question that's a little sort of like Tom's, but not quite, which is, Parks and Rec covers a fairly broad area. And, as people, we're blessed to have a lot of interest in the community and people that want to serve on this commission and so forth. Are there any specific sort of areas that you think that the Parks and Rec Commission could really use some more depth in? Because we've got some people that are experts on wildlife and conservation, and other people that are on kids recreation, other people on seniors recreation, and other people on other kinds of things. Are there any sort of sort of gaps that we ought to be trying to fill on the Parks and Rec Commission in your advice?
I would like to see more emphasis placed on programming, both recreational programming and open space programming. We've got a lot of great partners that we can work with. And I'd like to see us pay attention to immediate needs. It's great to think about the future, and a lot of great Palo Alto people have thought about the future, but I think that we sometimes forget that kids grow up. And so for instance, the skateboard park that we're all talking about, we want to make sure that it gets moved along so that the leader isn't graduated from college when we open the park.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So there's about a minute left, Ann, if you just want to sum up.
Thank you.
But if you had any closing statements, there's a little bit of time. It's up to you.
Well, I think it's just my nature, Tom, kind of being an old swimmer, to get to the end of the pool in the quickest ways possible. So I am sometimes frustrated by the fact that things take a long time, and I appreciate the fact that they need to, but I would like to see us have a little more ability to move more quickly. Having said that, again, I will say that I have a great deal of confidence in our community. We're very blessed to be here. And I'd only add one more plug for making sure that we continue to look at equity, especially gender equity, and when we're planning our programs.
Great. Okay, thank you. Our next applicant is Rich Pearson. I think he's online. Go, Rich, you should be able to turn your camera on, hopefully.
Hi.
So I don't know if you've been watching, if you could give us a quick introduction, your interests, and then we'll ask you some questions.
Good evening. My name is Rich Pearson, and my family has lived in Palo Alto for over 15 years. My wife, Jamie, daughter, Avery, son, Max, have each benefited from Palo Alto's open space and park and recreation activities, ranging from camping in Foothills Park, Baylands nature walks, taking care of the Barron Park donkeys, Little League baseball, NJB basketball, tennis, and now pickleball. After 25 years as a startup marketing executive, I'm now working part-time as an instructional aide at Duveneck Elementary. And I also volunteer at Bellhaven School in Menlo Park to help below-level students improve their literacy skills. My experience teaching students living just a few miles apart, yet who have very unequal educational resources, has sparked my interest in ensuring that Palo Alto parks and open spaces are equally accessible to all residents. I look forward to your questions. I think I can bring a lot to this position, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Allison.
Good evening, Mr. Pearson. Thanks so much for applying. Thank you also for being a volunteer with Ravenswood Partners, such a great organization. My question is about Cubberley, which I see you referenced in your application. When we redevelop Cubberley, what sorts of recreation opportunities would you like to see there?
Thanks for the question. I think Cubberley, looking at Cubberley in the context of Mitchell Park, and specifically what can be done at Mitchell Park, and the maybe lack of really compelling options for recreation activities at Cubberley right now. I see a very diverse, from an age standpoint, set of activities that can be done there. Much has been said about the gym. I've experienced the gym in the last few years and realized that it has to be improved. But for me, looking at the lens with complement to Mitchell Park, and then trying to find something teen friendly and really a heart and soul of Cubberley is lacking, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Greer.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, Rich. Thanks for applying, and also for your work at Duveneck. I'm a alumni myself, so always good to see people with connections there. You talked a bit about social justice, and that's an area that is always of great concern of mine. Can you speak more to that and how you would envision your role as a Parks and Recreation commissioner, and how we can do more on social justice?
Yeah, and I think it's been said in a few of the previous interviews of how amazing the number and of resources that are available to residents. However, if you are not in a home where you can search and have the time, or supported by resources who can find out those opportunities for you, it's very hard to take advantage of them. And in a lot of cases, it's very hard to even reach them. So for me, there's awareness and access issues that I think that as a Parks and Rec commissioner that I would focus on, and that would help improve the access and a diversity of usage across all of our great resources.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate that, and good insight for us on that. Thank you.
Great. Great. Councilmember Tanaka, it looks like you wanted to speak.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Rich, yeah, thank you for applying. Really love your background. I also do startups. Love that experience. I think it's important. Government, as you know, tends to be very slow and very deliberate, very cautious. Startups can be, as you know, very fast moving, a lot of experimentation. How do you think you'll be able to harness some of that startup marketing experience in this role to help, kind of maybe improve what's currently being done?
Yeah, I think, thanks for the question. And I realize that you've probably seen many startup executives get frustrated when they enter a different environment. And for me, and specific to the Parks and Rec Commission, having a creative, data-driven approach for validating that the 5-year plan continues to meet residents' needs. I'm very comfortable working in resource-constrained organizations and where scarcity often forces really creative and highly effective solutions. For that specifically, I am, when you look at how some great companies have been built based on data, for me, it's really frustrating to find out that we don't really have a great awareness of how many of our tennis courts are being used, how many of our parks resources are being used, or if so, it's not very accessible to the public. So I think that is something that should be driving our decisions. I know there was a lot of qualitative input into the 5-year plan. For me, as part of the speed of execution, just making sure that we have some data to guide us in implementing it correctly.
Great, thank you, appreciate it.
So you mentioned in your application, the Baylands Athletic Center. How would you think about kind of bringing the community along in terms of determining what should go there, if anything?
Yeah, I think there's, obviously stakeholder input and the community and future coaches, future families need to be incorporated into that feedback. For me, as I look at the Baylands, the opportunity there is from a fundraising standpoint, both from the athletic facilities as well as the nature and biodiversity programs. But specifically for the athletic center, I would really do a survey of what do we need and what types of recreation activities are we lacking based on the current fields, and get league kind of leaders involved in the selection of how we would approach improving those facilities.
Thanks. Any other questions? Pat?
Oh, well, thank you. Are we back? We're not seeing them, but.
Yeah, you're on.
Okay, great. So out of all the different recreation programs that you've been involved with, you've seen kind of the breadth of those areas. Are there any particular ones that you think come up short or shorter than others and need some additional focus?
So I guess from a kind of court usage and kind of scrambling for resources. To me, the basketball and indoor, particularly now there's badminton where you pretty much have to go outside of the city to be able to play. So I think our indoor facilities are lacking if I had to like pick a general theme. I do believe that on the outdoor side, we have built amazing facilities, but I don't think we know how they're being used. And I don't think we can make smart decisions without having a better sense of how they're being used, and obviously apply that to the indoor side as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Rich, we're just down to a few minutes if you want to wrap up.
Sure. So I also ascribe to Ann's, our commissioner's chairs about finishing fast, but you know, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan provides fantastic guidance to the ongoing investment in the city's or the community's greatest assets. And as a Parks and Rec commissioner, I would bring two critical skills to its implementation. One is what I talked about, a creative data-driven approach for validating that the 5-year plan continues to meet residents' needs. I'm very comfortable working in resource-constrained organizations, and my experience working with the city on the pickleball board has seen in reality how tough it is, so I can find creative solutions. My second asset is really a highly tuned focus for finding solutions that provide equal access to Palo Alto's diverse community needs. I've seen firsthand how educational resource inequality really impacts students and would push for programs and programming to avoid this with Parks and Recs. If selected, I will bring passion to the city with a strong dose of practicality to make a big difference in the lives of future generations of Palo Altans. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your consideration for this position.
And thank you for applying.
Thanks.
Our next applicant is Thomas Rhoda. Again, if somebody can demote Rich, I don't seem to be able to do that.
I'm here, Tom Rhoda.
Yeah, Tom, you should also be able to turn on your camera if you'd like.
I'd like to.
Let me see, hang on one second.
Join as panel, join as attendee. Okay, I'll just click on what. Can you see me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Well, let me just say a few words about myself as maybe an introduction and why I'm interested in this position. And but I must say, after listening to Ann and Rich speak, I'm very humbled. And what I would bring is sort of a lot of business acumen, which I'll speak to briefly, but very little knowledge compared to the extensive knowledge of the prior two speakers. My background is a chief financial officer for companies well, large companies like Ford Motor Company and Kimberly-Clark. And then 40 years here in Palo Alto, I've worked for many startups, some of which I founded, 5 of which I IPO'd and went public. 2 of those became multi-billion-dollar companies. So I've been a financial officer, and you know, all my life has been in the business community, and I've done nothing for the city of Palo Alto as a volunteer or work. And I'm at a point in my life that I feel bad about that. And I'm very interested in the outdoors. I'm very interested in the parks. I use the parks and the recreation facilities and the drinking out of pool and such. And I thought perhaps I could contribute and help. But I do realize that I'm a newbie and know very little compared to people that have that have been involved in the city and done more public service than I have. So that's sort of how I came into the situation.
Thank you for applying, and we do have a embarrassing wealth of applicants this go around. Allison, do you want to have a question?
Mr. Rhoda, good evening. Thank you so much for applying. I will say the #1 problem we have in the Parks and Rec area is funding all of our ideas. So don't leave us quite yet here. My question is specifically about the Cubberley Community Center. I don't know if you're familiar with the master plan that the school district and the city recently did, but we're hoping to redevelop that. And when we do, my question is, what sorts of recreational opportunities would you like to see at Cubberley Community Center?
Okay, well, young fives, and I did attend that area, but for years ago. To be honest, I need to know more and read that report before I could give you a cogent answer on that. And I don't mean to dodge your question. I don't also know about the data. I thought Rich commented earlier about what data we have, how the current facilities are used would guide that decision of what services and what opportunities we should offer at Cubberley. And I don't know how that's data collected. I would be in learn mode for a while and want to know, how those decisions could be made before I could give a better answer. And I realize that's not a very detailed answer, but I'd want to see the data. I'd want to see what facilities are used and how they're used and how we measure it, and then perhaps try to fill some of those gaps at Cubberley.
Thank you, Mr. Rhoda. And you should know I give that answer to people all the time when they ask me. I said I have to read the staff report first.
Yes.
So a couple of questions, I guess. I'd like to know kind of what your favorite city park is, and then whether you've seen an issue in the parks that you think we could do something better.
I'm glad you asked that question. I love Foothill Park. I go up there and wax my car and have picnics and have used it for many years. And frankly, one of my concerns is that for senior citizens, and I'm senior, I'm worried that there's no discount for seniors. I think it's expensive for people on a budget, and I'm worried about that. And as I said, after being on loan road, one of the perspectives I have is we need to figure out a way to make it more accessible to seniors, because I think it's a fabulous park. And then going way back, when we used to have little boating activities in property by the airport, and it's just that whole area seems to be underutilized, and I think more could be done if there was budget to use it. And I was sorry to see years ago when we shut all that down. So those are two areas that I'm particularly interested in and would want to learn more about what could be done to improve the access.
Sorry, I didn't catch what was shut down.
Oh, we used to have a little sailing
right.
harbor, and you could have rowing out of there. The Stanford team could row out of there. It's a great potential facility that's just not used anymore. And I'd just like to know more about that. Could that ever be turned around?
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Council members, any questions?
Well, just to preempt a question is, my interest would be as a financial officer is the budgeting and the fundraising and the allocation of resources. And, a comment was made about, making tough decisions in scarcity. And there's, in startups that I've been involved with, there's always scarcity and sort of I would expect the same situation here. And I think perhaps I could lend some judgment there.
Allison, do you have another question?
Mr. Rhoda, while I have you on Foothills Nature Preserve,
Oh, yes.
the senior discount for the annual pass for someone who lives in Palo Alto brings the annual cost down to, I think, $37.50.
I see.
There are also free passes available every day. I believe they're at our libraries. I believe they're at Rinconada and Mitchell Park. First come, first served. You just stop by and you can pick up a free pass no matter what your age. So we
I was unaware of that, and I'm glad
yeah.
to know that.
Yeah.
And that sort of speaks to the whole issue of communication within the Parks and Recreation, how we get the word out. And that's something I'd want to know more about and would be interested in. I think there's probably a lot that most of us and citizens don't know about how to use and what's available. And I think that's something that should be worked on and looked at.
Mr. Rhoda, thank you so much for your application. I wanted to ask, we talk a lot about all the recreation facilities and the opportunities, but then there's also the nature part of Parks and Rec. So obviously a lot of people have talked about how important parks are as well as open space. When it comes to human-made technology, versus nature, such as trees. How would you balance that? Would technology be something that overtakes?
I
Yes.
didn't quite get that question. How would I balance between, would you explain that again?
Yes. So for example, man-made technology, human-made, solar panels, that is going to be placed on rooftops versus, and if there's a tree shading it. So how would you balance that and ensure that we're still able to preserve our nature, which also benefits us, versus these technological advances for climate change?
Okay, well, I understand. So I think the nature's paramount here, and that nothing should be done to overrule the importance of the nature itself. I mean, the solar panels that are on utility buildings or parking lots is great, but I certainly wouldn't want to see, parkland used for any other purpose other than its natural state and the way it's, is being used. I don't know if that addresses your question, but I would put technology definitely behind its influence on just preserving the natural beauty of our parks. And like, for example, Foothill, how beautiful and tranquil it is. I wouldn't want it disturbed.
Thank you for that.
Greg?
Hi, Tom. I really appreciate you applying. I like your background. I think we need, especially during these tight times, we need to be very fiscally responsible. And I think your background does that. My question to you is somewhat similar to some other council members, but given your background, given the very limited constrained budget that we have and revenue that's been tough, how do you think you could use your financial background to better assist us in trying to make these different trade-offs, right? Because like someone else said, there's so many different things that we want to fund and so little money.
Well, the first would be that as if I were to be on this group, I need to understand the city's budget, which at this point I don't, but and what its allocation is in total. And then from a sort of top-down point of view, how do we make the decisions, the nature part of it versus the tennis courts versus how do we allocate that? And how have we raised more money in the past? And how have we been able to convince the council in general and the budgeting process in general to give more here? This is what gives, I think the Parks and Recreation is the best part of the city of Palo Alto. And how do we develop its share of the total budget? What's worked in the past? And how do we address the total number at the top? And then how do we allocate it within it and make the decisions within it? And again, I think a lot of it comes back to data. If we have better data of how it's used and where it's not used, we can better reallocate what we have. We can also argue for, listen, this is how heavily this is used, and this is why it needs more budget. So, I mean, the best decisions are data-driven. I think Rick made that point, and I strongly agreed with that. So let's gather the data to convince the larger group of decision makers why Parks and Recreations needs the budget or a better budget than it has. And then let's figure how to allocate it based on what the public shows their needs are by usage.
Great. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. And that's our 10 minutes. So
great.
Thank you very much for applying.
Well, very, very fun to apply. And if I don't get into this, I do want to do something for the city of Palo Alto after all these years. So I was happy to apply, and thanks for taking.
Yeah, I would encourage you to keep your eye out. We have a lot
of Tom, can I throw something in here?
Sure.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, both Toms, right? Right. Yes. So thank you very much for applying for this. We have a lot of candidates here, so we've got a hard choice in front of us.
Yes.
If you reapply, if you don't get this one and you reapply, that would be great. Did you look at the Utilities Advisory Commission as well?
No, I haven't, but I would.
You might look at. You might
some role somewhere.
You might look at that one. That's a good one, and it's a good for people with a quantitative, data-driven kind of mental framework.
Okay.
I personally enjoy that one quite a bit. So
okay,
thank you,
Eric.
Thanks. Thank you, Eric. Thank you all. I'll sign off.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Our next applicant is Andy Reed. Kieran Chambers.
Hi. Thank you, Council, for this opportunity to interview and for your time this evening. Parks and Recreation is an area of city government that I'm very interested in. My background includes leading a nonprofit organization to build an off-leash dog park in Grass Valley by negotiating with City Council for a parcel of public land and tapping grant funds to build capital improvements and fundraising for the expenses, gathering together volunteers, and then doing the research and building an off-leash dog park. Most recently, I sat on a working group for Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District to study and advise the board on feasibility of increasing public access to La Honda Creek Preserve. There were many opposing views that we all sat together on the dais, but we all determined to come up with a consensus respectfully, and it was a fascinating and invigorating experience. I'm an avid park user. I take outdoor classes at Mitchell a couple times a week and hike Los Trancos up in Foothills. I like running around Baylands and Bixby Park. I got back into town yesterday and checked out the bridge, which is incredible, and especially the view as you come over, and the view of the Baylands is really remarkable. I really appreciated the interpretive little signage and the chance to sit on the bench. And all the signage up and down the bridge was really helpful too. I'm in awe of this beautiful town. And my expertise is in the business end, having been in public accounting for many decades. But I would be thrilled to put my skills and enthusiasm to work for use for the city of Palo Alto on the PRC. Thank you for consideration.
Thank you. Pat.
Thank you, Andy. Can you share with us any thoughts you have about particular areas of either our parks or recreational opportunities that we should be focusing more on?
I think I was very impressed with the way the Parks and Rec Commission put together a panel to study how to open Foothills as a pilot program before it actually opened very quickly. But I think that was a fascinating exercise. They held a slate of experts in habitat and environment and park management, put it all together, and still that can be used as Foothills starts to be able to get staffed up and get to normal. I think that's a really important thing. And so adding amenities to parks is something I think is very important. I watch some meetings, and I know bathrooms are somewhat controversial because there's so many parts to it, but I think that's something that needs to move forward. And of course it does bring in more people, which I think is a wonderful thing for bringing community together and engagement. But of course we have to be sensitive to the neighbors and the increase in traffic and activity around their neighborhoods. I think, we should try to achieve this 4 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents and make sure that it's spread evenly throughout the city. And of course, that also requires buy-in, but we need to make sure that the most people get the most use of the parks within location and ease of travel to walkability.
Thank you.
Allison.
Thanks, Ms. Reed. It's nice to see you, and thank you for applying again for the Parks and Recreation Commission. My question, as you have no doubt heard, is about Cubberley. And so when we redevelop Cubberley, what sorts of recreation opportunities would you like to see there for the whole community?
Well, I really appreciate Coverly. You know, what a resource. I'm saddened that it's kind of being degraded, you know, that it's falling apart. And I'm glad that there has been some movement on it. I mean, if I only had to think about recreational facilities, I think Palo Alto is way overdue for a lovely big gym. And I used to play pickleball a lot before I got injured, but indoor pickleball is really awesome. Although, of course, Palo Alto has such beautiful weather, you don't really need it that often, but that would be great. And as the gentleman was saying about badminton and these kind of sports, we don't have any place to go to do those kinds of sports, and rock climbing as well. I think I go to Mitchell a lot for classes, and boy, when the pandemic came on, you couldn't find a piece of grass that didn't have a class going on. And I know some classes, you have to actually wear earphones so that they're not hearing the other person's music. And I think there can be an overuse issue. And so certainly outdoor activities and the open spaces where you can have theater and the arts, I think would be marvelous. I love the track over there. So that's my favorite part of Coverly. And I've used the History Museum over there. But it's a great resource. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greer.
Thanks, Tom. And hi, Andy. Thanks for taking the time to apply and being here tonight. I appreciated you mentioning the 4 acres per 1,000 residents ratio and trying to achieve that. And I'm curious your thoughts on what do you see as the greatest impediment to the city achieving that goal? And how would you work with different stakeholders to really kind of help us move towards that goal?
Well, that's a really good question because as we see state laws coming down the pike and certainly more housing is going to be in our future, I just think we need to plan and we need to prioritize that open space is very important for the quality of life for our citizens. And by open space, I'm not crazy about the idea of rooftop gardens. I think green and lots of trees is very healthy for citizens. So we're going to be seeing a lot of projects coming through that are going to be mainly dedicated to increasing our housing stock. And that's the point at which we need to step up and make sure that there's open space that everybody can enjoy. That would be my thought.
Lydia.
Ms. Reed, thank you for reapplying again. I see in your application, you mentioned that you seem to be involved in many different sports and many different groups. So what kind of comments do you hear from people that you happen upon in your different activities, you know, in your trekking, in your Zumba dancing and all of that? What kind of comments do you hear from them, good and bad, that we could improve on maybe?
Well, I really think the pickleball, getting permanent courts for pickleball, I followed that when the Parks and Rec Commission was studying that and eventually did a really great job working with the Palo Alto pickleball lead and the staff and the commission to make that happen. And what has happened is it's the fastest growing sport in the United States. And so it's so popular that now the permanent courts are quite intimidating because they're full all the time. And so not during COVID, but they've come back. And so I think that's an area that we need more pickleball courts, I think. Again, if Coverly were to be able to provide more courts, either indoor or outdoor, that would be one area. Swimming at Rinconada was really difficult during COVID. So it would be my best choice for Coverly as well to have a pool. The way it was run was necessary, I understand, for the safety and health of us. But it was pretty expensive and very difficult. You had to call in after midnight the week prior to your reservation for a lane. And I think it's because we have a shortage of pools for people to swim laps. But that was another area that was difficult. On the other hand, Baylands is just so marvelous, from, running and having an airplane go over your head to watching the ducks play as you're running by. That's a marvelous place. And Bixby, and so all of that open space is super valuable asset to Palo Alto.
Thank you.
And that 10 minutes flies by. So I think we're out of time. So thank you for applying it.
Thank you. As a community volunteer over the past 6 years, I found attending or listening to boards and commission meetings very heartening. I'm always impressed with the hard work and dedication all of you bring to the table. With climate change and state laws coming down the pike, we need to pay attention to our parks and open spaces, urban forests and creeks, and ensure that their preservation and maintenance for public health and that of our friends and neighbors. Thank you for consideration for a seat on the PRC.
Thank you. Our next applicant is Mark Weiss.
Good evening. I'm Mark Weiss. I actually am recalling very precisely when I first met each of the four of you. It's been a long, mostly good time. I was a candidate for city council in 2009, and 2 subsequent times I've been a candidate for boards or commission several times. And part of the reason I'm here today is I was working with Mayor Tom Du Bois on Together Again Palo Alto, and I produced, I think, 14 events at either Lytton Plaza, California Avenue, Cogswell Plaza. And it was a wonderful experience, and I appreciate getting a certificate of thanks from the city and from the mayor. But also there was a tiny false note of something about permission and permits and music in the park. So if you read my application, and there's a bit of confusion whether when I say see attached, it's actually in the packet or not, but I believe it is online. There's some quibble I have with how we think about the First Amendment in the parks. But what I really want to talk about tonight, though, is it's the same thread. And I've been a candidate for several of these boards, and they all kind of interweave. Like there's public art in the parks, for example. But I understand that tonight is the 91st birthday of Mr. Bowl, B-O-L, whose family donated Bowl Park. And I heard this from his son-in-law, Elliot Crowder, who Terry and I happened to meet one day in Carmel. And he's married to Manila Bowl, that's her name. And apparently that family, does keep tabs on our park and our donkeys, or their donkeys that Palo Altans feel very attached to. And I think it does highlight that for a lot of us, I've been here since 1974 in this community. Palo Alto has a very rich and unique history in athletics, agriculture, the arts. More recently, people know about, Google, where a couple of you work or have worked, and a lot of high tech. But Palo Alto has a very, very rich culture. And of course, our parks are part of our heritage too. So I would be very interested in serving on this commission. I'm doing stuff in the parks. I do events in the parks with Earthwise Productions. So if there's a greater good in my work being with the commission, that would be, I think, good for everybody. So I'd be interested in your support.
So Mark, thanks again for all the music in September, and it was awesome events. How would you think about being on Parks and Rec and balancing things like that, musical acts versus like people wanting to enjoy the parks?
Well, obviously, for example, as a precedent, Ann Warner Cribbs, very famous Palo Altan, Olympic swimmer, 1960. Incidentally, her daughter Blair was my schoolmate at Gunn, and interestingly, Blair Cribbs is a singer. She was in a group of moms. I think they're called Hey Mom. Ann Cribbs does many, many things, and she's not like she's always just saying, let's add more pools. I mean, so even if I was on a commission, I would not be saying, you know, every problem looks like a nail if you have a hammer. Every Palo Alto policy problem would be, obviously, a solution would be adding music. So, I mean, I have a lot of different interests. As you know, Tom, I'm interested in basketball. David Moss, actually, I was surprised he wasn't applying, but David Moss, who served 6 years, had invited me to speak in January of 2020 to the Parks Commission, and he had been to some of my concerts, and he thought I should speak to the Parks Commission on music in the parks, and instead I spent half my time talking about basketball, and I sort of developed a relationship with Coach Jeff Lemaire, our commissioner, and I had suggested that because of our rich history of basketball here, that we could be naming, might be fun to start naming some of the courts after famous Palo Altans who play basketball. So, I mean, to answer your question, even though I'm a music guy, I would obviously, I would recuse if there was some conflict where, you know, it seemed like I'm not an asset to the board because I'm an expert on music and have a lot of connections in music, that it would somehow be a detraction. So, yeah, okay. That's an easy question. Allison? That's a layup.
Thanks, Mr. Weiss. It's so nice to see you. Thanks for applying. My question is about Cubberley. So when we redevelop Cubberley, what sorts of recreational opportunities would you like to see there? Presumably you'll start with basketball, but go from there.
Well, case in point, Hans Delanoy, Cubberley class of 70, is a very close friend of mine. And I saw him 3 weeks ago, and he was our coach at Gunn in 1980 and 81 when Cubberley closed. And we also inherited a high school All-American named Kent Lockhart, and we won 2 consecutive championships. We were the best team in the history of Gunn High School, one of the top 5 in the history of the city, 25-3. And Hans, he was a classmate of Earl Hansen, who was also later known as Pally's football coach. And Cubberley people, they're out there. A lot of them are still here. I mean, of the 25 classes, men and women, who attended Cubberley as a high school, it means so much to them. They don't all live in Palo Alto still, but they talk to each other. They are really well organized. And I would say what best serves the city, and I'm not a Cubberley guy, I just know a lot of Cubberley guys and gals, is that they should be heard. Whatever we do decide, it's a complicated issue. I've thought of everything from, could there be 10,000 houses there, including for police and for teachers and for musicians, to, should it be just open space? Pluck out every little piece of concrete and make it sort of like Foothill Park. So it's complicated. This, you know, the school board obviously has a say, or has a lot of say. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting topic. I'd love to have input, but point of fact, I produced 150 events, concerts at Cubberley between 1994 and 2001, and then one event there in October of 19 as well.
Thank you. So I wouldn't quite agree with the way the mayor phrased the question of whether how you'd balance people having music in the park versus enjoying the park, because I often find them one and the same. But on that same theme, whether it's in our parks or more broadly in the community, can you share any thoughts you have about how we can long-term have more outdoor music as recreational events as well as art events?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor Burt, former Mayor Burt, future Mayor Burt. I took a sip of water and I missed part of the question. Do you mind just rephrasing, repeating the? What things might we do to further have performing arts be part of both our recreational experience and art experience in the community compared to what we have now? We have such wonderful parks, and we've done, over the time of my 25 years in the music biz, we've had some wonderful concert experiences in the parks. But with due respect, I think Historically, we've done better for our Tuesday night twilight or our Saturday night parks or our brown bag series that comes and goes like the disappearing sands of Kona or whatever. I think we could do better, whether it's public-private partnerships, whether it's a foundation like the Rec Foundation, whether it's the Together Again Palo Alto Take Two. I think there's huge interest in, I mean, you don't want to trample the grass, but I think even at Foothill Park, Mr. Paulson, I believe is his name, a member of the Lee family, he said that the Lee family always felt there should be concerts in that 7.7 acre new addition. If you had parks music at Foothill Park, you could have shuttle buses so that there's no cars going up there, and just make a really Bay Area Action, which is now Actera, which gave us Mayor Peter Dreckmeyer, once had Sister Monica Parker, the dearly departed Sister Monica Parker, did a show up there that was very environmentally friendly. You know, my whole thing is, although I benefit from Silicon Valley, indirectly, I'm not an engineer. I worked in the arts as of 27 years ago. And Palo Alto has amazing young people who can contribute to the world either by the next billion-dollar app or by the next hit song, like my gun schoolmate who had a song that went do 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 semi-charm kind of life, baby. I'm not a singer. My point is, I think you get my point, is we could do a little bit better. Allison sings. Tom was head of music at the Gun High School. Dad, I'm sure Lydia is musical, and even Pat can be musical when he's not throwing the discus or remembering the good old days. So anyhow, sorry. Greer was musical. Greer won the contest of When You Were Mine, You Were Kind of Sort of My Best Friend.
All right. Oh, that was the 10 minutes. So thank you very much, Mark. Our next applicant is Jeff Greenfield.
Good evening, Mayor Du Bois and City Council members. It's great to be in chambers and to see faces in person. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Hey, Jeff, can you get a little closer to the
Yes,
microphone?
I can.
Thank you.
Thank you. The mask factor, I have to get used to that. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening and for the opportunity to serve on the commission the past 5 years. It's been a great experience overall. We've all had our challenges the past few years, but it's the successes that make it all worthwhile. Our community treasures our rec programs, our parks, our open space, and it's been a pleasure to really get in and be dedicated, committed, detail-oriented, and passionate about helping develop our programs and parks and open spaces. And I would look forward to an opportunity to continue to do so for another term. Term limits aside, I would be interested in one more term, term limits or not. But thank you.
And can you remind us, you did a partial term and then a full term?
Yes, I did it. I served 2 years partial term to start, and then I served a 3-year term after that. So I've served for 5 years, 3 years as vice chair and 1 year as chair.
And Eric, I see your hand up. I don't know if that was previously.
Sure. Jeff, thank you very much for your service and for being willing to take this on again. Having done this for a little while and being familiar with sort of the whole environment, give us your advice. What kind of people or what kind of skill depth should we be looking at adding to the Parks and Recreation Commission at this point?
Sure. So since I've served on the commission for the past 5 years, we've never had a commissioner with a life sciences background. And so given the focus that we have on stewarding open space areas and parks, I think someone with a life sciences background would be very valuable and appropriate to have on the commission. I think another potential gap, or a real gap, is our youth recreation programming. I think someone who's really tuned into younger kids especially could benefit the commission. And these are the same gaps that I've articulated the past couple of years.
Cool, thanks.
But I think there's we've got a great applicant pool this time around, and hopefully can plug some of those holes a bit.
Allison?
Mr. Greenfield, good evening. Thanks for reapplying, and it was nice to see you at the bike bridge opening on Saturday.
Yes.
My question, of course, is about Cubberley this evening for Parks and Recreation Commission. What sorts of recreational opportunities would you like to see at Cubberley when we redevelop it?
So for Cubberley, the biggest thing is move forward with plans and remove the ambiguity and move forward with creating a hub for our community. There's so many different programs and needs to place there, but so many things have been in various states of limbo for so many years. The biggest thing is figuring out a way to make something happen. Adding gym space, adding a pool, adding more courts, maintaining the fields that we have, adding classroom space, adding senior center, a cafe and cooking opportunities and programs for ranging from toddlers to seniors. It's really difficult to prioritize one over the other since there are just so many things that we could do with that space. It's in a dilapidating state, and the sooner we can move forward with it, the better. And if you had to ask me my top priority for the commission to focus on, that would be it. It's aspirational because there's not, our hands are tied in many ways, but it's a top priority.
Thank you.
Lydia?
Thank you for reapplying, Mr. Greenfield. You have been a commissioner, and so you have seen the board and commission's handbook prior to it being rewritten. So is there any guidance you'd like to give the council in terms of how it's working out for the commission?
Sure. First, I would thank the mayor and Councilmember Cormack for their detailed effort in putting the new guide handbook together. I'm a detail-oriented person. I love getting things down and clear. Two of the biggest changes, I think, and important changes are, one, the work plans, and two, the term limits. The work plans, I think, are essential for the commissions. The guidance that the commissions were given the first time around particularly was challenging. And even after all of the chairs met and unanimously asked for examples of filling out the work plans and trying to understand how how the work plan applied to each commission, this information wasn't there even after requesting it. So we're kind of flying on our own. I think the Parks Commission was the first commission to submit their work plan, and we did the best we could, and I think we did a good job. But more guidance, specifically including examples of what you like and what you don't like would be helpful. On the subject of term limits, I fully support the term limits. I appreciate that they've been extended to 8 or 9 years, depending on if you're serving on a 4-year or 3-year board or commission. I think there's some ambiguity on the hard limit of 8 and 9 years that would be great to get sorted out. For example, with these terms are going to get extended 2.5 months or 10 months. Does that apply to the 8 or 9 year limit? Is it initially in November of 2020, when the handbook was, the motion from council adopted the handbook, there was a guidance that each existing board and commission member would be allowed to apply for another term. It's not clear if that is actually the case, depending on how long they've served. Also, partial terms, it seemed to be a disincentive for someone to serve. If there is a hard limit for a planning commissioner to serve 8 years, and if they serve a 1 or 2 year partial term, and then they serve another 4-year term, then they wouldn't be able to serve an additional term after that. And it seems like specifically including a provision to serve an extra half-year term to encourage people to accept the partial terms would be very helpful.
Thank you for that.
Is that clear? It's a lot of details on that.
I appreciate that. We're trying to make sure that it is going to be an easy easy way to follow through.
Sure, and I'm saying that doesn't affect me personally. I'm just looking at this from a broader perspective and looking at the details, which I tend to do.
Thank you.
So, Greer.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, Jeff. Good to see you, and thanks for your service and applying again. So my question, I mean, you've served several years and you've been in leadership positions, and you currently are in a leadership position as vice chair. What have you not yet accomplished that you hope to accomplish in another term?
Sure. Thanks for the question. I'm very excited about the relationship between the Urban Forestry Department and Parks and Rec that the council has given us a green light to move forward with. I've spent a lot of time this past year reviewing the tree protection ordinance and working with staff to recommend some changes to that. I actually learned more recently that there's more precedent for the Parks Commission being involved with this than I had understood. The Urban Forest Master Plan was developed in conjunction with the Parks Commission, and former chairs Jen Hedderly and other chairs were directly involved with that. Also in the Parks Master Plan, Ed Lowing, I couldn't pick up his name, sorry. And the Parks Master Plan actually specifically calls out for the commission to review the tree maintenance manual, which is a staff document which it kind of works in conjunction with Title VIII Tree Protection Code. And it's kind of the tactical details associated with that. So I'm very excited about that. On a simpler level, there's field issues we need to get sorted out. Unfortunately, we're having a lot of problems with our turf fields, artificial synthetic turf fields with the infill material that wasn't properly rated, and it's now melting, and the original contractors are out of business, and staff's scrambling in a difficult situation to get that sorted out. Just getting the new restroom added to Coverly, it was green lighted a couple years ago, and we're still waiting for that. Speaking with some club members, they were asking if they can add a second portable there just to address the need, and not even really understanding that we were waiting for the restrooms to come there. So I could go on and on, but I'll stop.
And I think we're out of time. So
another good reason to stop.
Thank you for applying.
Thank you, all of you, for your service.
Our next applicant is Joy Oche, and apologies if I pronounce that wrong. And Joy, I don't know if you've been watching, but it can take a minute or two to introduce yourself, and then we'll ask you questions.
Thank you very much. I want to start by saying I'll give you a 7/10 for how you pronounce my surname. So that's a pass back. I want to thank everyone for shortlisting me for this opportunity. My name is Joy. I have an engineering background. I'm a soccer mom, yay. And I love the fact that since my kids and I moved to Palo Alto in January, it's been fun because we live right across the Greer Park. We have enough space to do so much running. I play soccer with them, kind of more of quality time, bonding time. For me as a professional woman, that's very, very important to be able to bond with my kids after work, after I had this job. Once upon a time, last month, I read David Moss's story, his article on Palo Alto Online, and that kind of sparked and ignited a desire inside of me that has been burning for a while. I'm an African immigrant, and I came here with my two kids, moved here with hopes and dreams, and I want to give back. I want to see how I can give back. I listened to a couple of other potential candidates, and it was really intimidating listening to people who have served before, and many things that I bring to the table. But most of all, for me, I think my dexterity, my desire to learn, to bring fresh ideas. I used to live in the UK. I had some work experience there where I got my master's in environmental engineering. Since I've moved to the US, I've tried to learn and unlearn a lot of things as well. And I'm hoping that this will be an opportunity for me to not just learn, but also be able to bring fresh ideas that will make our community more happy, more safe. We know a lot of people have been locked, at home because of the pandemic. As things begin to evolve and get better, I'm hopeful that, because it's the commission, the Parks and Recreation Commission is like all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. It's like the main core that can help, people socially. I looked at the 4 priorities, that the city has, and, I could resonate with the 4 of them. But most importantly, the fact that I could be a voice for people who look like me, people who sound like me. My late dad used to always say, it's easy for you to be on the sidelines, complaining and whining. Why don't you try? Always try. You either get a yes, a no, or a maybe. So here I am trying to see how I can be a voice for people who look like me, and also bring fresh ideas based on my more than 15 years work experience in the UK, here in the US, and also in Sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Greer.
Thanks, Tom. And hi, Joy. Thanks so much for applying. I really like your background and your desire to be a voice in this community. I think that's really important and powerful. And I really love that you've lived in different parts of the world and have had different experiences. How do you think those various experiences and kind of witnessing how other countries and communities have structured their park systems or recreation or organizations and opportunities, how would that help you, do you think, in bringing a new perspective to the Parks and Recreation Commission?
Thank you for asking. So for me, I won't say I know all the answers to the question you've asked, but I can say that being, fortunate to have lived all over the world and see how things are done, it will give me a perspective to be able to. It's easy for you to come into a room and notice things that are wrong than if you've been looking at it or you've been in that room for several months. So for me, I think, being able to be in the weeds, because I don't have experience working in a council, a city council, a commission from other countries, but I see how things run. And that's the curiosity that I have, that I bring into the commission. And I hope that based on the things that I've experienced, the pleasurable experiences that I've had from other cities and other countries, would help me to be able to spot the difference. I'm someone who is very big on continuous self-improvement, and I'm very good at also research. So it's something that I pride myself on. I'm sorry if I'm tooting my horn, but if I don't, who would, right? So it's something that I see that would be able to, I can spot the difference, and I'll be able to make the difference.
Allison.
Could you please tell us how you do pronounce your last name?
Oh, thank you, Alison. Oche.
Oche.
Yeah,
All
only
right.
with
I wasn't too far.
Oche.
Yes. Oche.
Good evening, and thank you very much for applying. My usual question is about Cubberley, but it looks like you might not have had an opportunity to review those documents about Cubberley. Okay.
But my son takes classes there.
What is he taking there?
He takes academic writing because my major strengths are in STEM. So I found a gap, and I said, you know what, I'm going to look for a class for you to help you, cover your areas of opportunity. So he takes classes there, and while we wait for him, my younger son and I will play tennis.
Great.
We play something that looks like tennis.
That's fair. I'll ask you then my other usual question, which is what are 2 words that people who work with you would use to describe you and how you do your work?
I would say they would have more than 2 words.
That's fine. Just pick a few.
2 words will be, I would say dexterity. I would also say excellence.
Thank you so much, Ms.
Thank you.
Oche.
My pleasure.
Lydia.
I'm so glad you applied, Ms. Oche. You mentioned you were from South Sahara?
Sub-Saharan Africa. So I'm from Nigeria. Country,
Oh, okay,
yeah,
from
in West
Nigeria,
Africa.
right.
Yes.
Very good. We talk a lot about sustainability and climate change and so forth. And so there is the need for the natural environment in terms of human-made technology versus natural environment, such as our trees or our water. How would you balance that so that we don't lose the natural aspect of our environment?
For me, I would say the first thing would be to find out what the gaps are, understand what the problem is, because you can't solve a problem until you understand it. And a simple technique I taught my kids is use the 5 W's and the 1 H. So you ask yourself what the problem is, why do you want to solve the problem? How are you going to solve the problem? Who does it affect? So it's asking those questions that will birth bridging the gap of being able to do that. I'm very, very, passionate about the environment as well. So, and it's kind of like my field. And I'm hoping that creating awareness would also be good, because solving a problem without involving the entire community would not be beneficial. It would be good to take everyone along. So I believe that being able to bridge that gap will be asking the right questions and also making sure that it's inclusive and we carry everyone along.
Very wise. That's the 6 W.
Thank you.
I'll jump in before we run out of time. So could you remind me again, how long have you been in Palo Alto? And then we've talked a lot about parks, but I'm curious if you've used some of the recreation programs, the summer camps, or some of the other things at the rec part of Parks and Rec.
Okay, I moved here in January, and because I heard the city of Palo Alto is beautiful. So I came here to look and I fell in love with it. My kids loved it. And we saw that window and we moved. And I would say that it's safe, it's quiet, it's cool, it's calm. I haven't had any problems with that moving here, and I enjoy living here. And for me, I feel that the missing part would be bridging the gap between seniors and younger people. I come from a very cultural background, and I believe that seniors are valuable and they need to pass on their wisdom to younger people. I don't see that happening a lot here. I started a non-profit foundation. I volunteered for a non-profit foundation back in my home country called After School Talent Development Initiative, because I saw an opportunity for kids to learn life skills that they are not usually taught within the 4 walls of a classroom. So ethics, values, how to etiquette, different things that, make someone a whole person compared to their peers or their counterparts all over the world. I would like to see something like that modeled in the city of Palo Alto. It's something that I see that would be very beneficial for the community. And I look forward to seeing that play out, because I know that there's a lot that young people can learn from people who have lived before them. I don't want them saying, or people moving their skills to the graveyard and saying the cemetery is the richest place of wisdom, but being able to pass on the baton to people who are younger. I want to see that.
Okay, thank you. So our 10 minutes goes very fast, and we've said this earlier tonight, we've got an embarrassing wealth of candidates this time around, and if for some reason you don't make it, we urge you to apply again. Just, we have so many good applicants, you guys make it very hard on us this time around. Yeah, other commissions too, but for this one as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
And then we're at our last interview. This one is for the Planning Commission. Bryna Chang is online. Bryna, let me promote you to panelist. You should be able to turn on your camera as well. And this will be a 15-minute interview.
All right, great. Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry I couldn't be here last week when you were interviewing the other PTC applicants. I was traveling and on the road at the time you were interviewing, so I didn't have internet access. Thank you to all of you and to the city staff for accommodating me tonight and making room in the schedule. I also wanted to thank all of you guys for all the tireless work that you do. I know that what you do isn't easy and it's a lot of work. And this month in particular, as we think about all that we're grateful for, I just want to say I'm really grateful for all that you do. So I was just here about 8 months ago, being interviewed for a very short stint on the PTC. So I'm just going to refresh your memory quickly with what I said before. So I'm a longtime Palo Alto resident. I grew up in the area going to Nixon, JLS, and Gunn, and I went to college here too. And then I did leave and I went briefly to Los Angeles and Utah and then came back about 22 years ago for business school and stayed. And so now I have 2 kids, one at JLS and one at Gunn. I have been a really dedicated school and community volunteer over the last decade, with a lot of involvement in the PTA and in school site councils, also with a local nonprofit board for the Silicon Valley Boy Choir, which was founded by a Palo Alton and also based in Palo Alto. So I think that context with lots of different people in Palo Alto is a strength of mine. I've also, because I've been in the area for so long, I've seen a lot of the changes that Palo Alto has gone through over the last 40 years. And some are great and some are not as great. And I think now that the pandemic, is not as bad, we're seeing a lot of those problems come back in the form of the traffic, the congestion, and of course now housing shortage as we're thinking about the housing element and our massive 6,000 plus allocation through RENA. So I love this city, and having served on the PTC for just a few months, I learned a lot. I also hope that I contributed some value to the commission, and I'd love to continue to serve. As one other applicant said, as we look at building housing, I think that doing it well versus doing it poorly is the big thing that is really going to impact all of our quality of life. And so I hope that I can pitch in there. So as I said before, I'm just an average citizen. With the interest and the commitment to serve, I really got interested because as a school volunteer, I was doing traffic duty and saw just how scary it is out there in a way that it wasn't many years ago. And so I think I have the skills and perspective, particularly as a longtime resident, that are helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for applying again. What has surprised you the most once you joined the Planning Commission? Was there anything that you didn't expect?
Well, personally, I kind of had an idea of what I was getting into beforehand, having talked to some other commissioners, but it's a lot of work. And that's why I thank all of you for all of your work. It's a lot of work. The other thing is I'm just so impressed with all the other commissioners and their dedication and the amount of the varied expertise that people have and the value that really contributes. I think what surprised me in terms of how the commission works is how little the commission has a say in what comes before us. A lot of it is fairly opportunistic. I do think that there's room for us to perhaps be a little bit more thoughtful. It makes sense that some of the planning applications are, we need to do the work that comes before us, but I think we need to maybe be a little bit more forward thinking as we think about traffic and transportation also. And that's not, it doesn't kind of come before us in the same way that's as applicant driven.
Yep. And we do have this new work plan process that hopefully you guys can take advantage of.
Yeah, and our commission has been talking a little bit about that, and maybe this year we'll have the chance to do a retreat and maybe think a little bit about how that works. I also think that to the extent that council has things that you would like us to work on, please send them our way with a deadline, because I think the challenge that staff is shorthanded. I feel for them. They do so much work, but they need the help prioritizing also. And so to the extent that there's something that council is really interested in having us work on, that direction is always good too.
Rick?
So thank you for your service on this and for being willing to do it again. now that you're an old hand there, right?
I don't know about that.
Give us some advice. What kind of people or skill sets should we be looking to put on the PTC at this point in time?
So I think a balance is good. I mean, I really value those commissioners who have understanding of our code. So that's something that you develop over time, because the code is massive, and to know that, wait a second, there's something that we need to look at, that's valuable. I also think that you want some people who are kind of like me, who are involved and have a lot of experience with different parts of Palo Alto over time, because it's really helpful to know that we're talking about this particular area and to have kind of in-depth knowledge about what the traffic patterns are, what people do in that area, or what, so that contextual knowledge is very, very helpful. Also, I would say that we have a couple three actually real estate attorneys there right now. And I don't know that everybody needs to be an attorney, but it is very helpful to have some people with that legal expertise also, because, for example, we just have an application that we couldn't finish doing, but where there's some question about, should it be a parcel map amendment, or it's a pretty technical issue, like should it be an amendment or a new map? And I think that was valuable to have some attorneys there too. So I do think a good mix of people.
Cool, thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Brenda. With the work plan, the different commissions can set up kind of certain areas that they want to be more proactive on. I wanted to get your thoughts on the potential value of subcommittees within the PTC to be able to dive deeper into some areas like some of our other commissions have done in recent years. You see potential value in that?
Absolutely, I see. It's so funny because I was serving on the Gun Site Council, and my big push last year there was, please let us have subcommittees, because it's difficult to do work, with 5 people all opining on something. And really, if you're able to take things a little bit offline and delve deeper, I think that there's a lot of value in that. And I also think that it needs to be kind of commission led, because those subcommittees take a lot of time, as you all well know. And so it should be in areas where people have the interest and the aptitude to chip in. But yes, I absolutely think so, because there's so many times where we sit there and we say, gosh, we wish we knew a little bit more about this, or could spend a little bit more time on it.
Great, thank you.
Allison.
Hello, Ms. Chang. It's nice to see you. Thanks for serving on the PTC this year. I was interested that you mentioned medical office at Town and Country, because that was frankly, a point of contention with the council and the PTC this year. I'm curious about what data you think would be helpful if this topic came up again.
So what I think we need to do, as you probably looked at, I was not in favor of the medical office at the time, because the situation was changing. And also we just didn't, it was we had data from the applicant regarding the applicant versus data about retail in general and where retail is headed, which I think would be valuable. And so a number of us actually were talking in the meeting about, gosh, it'd be great if with our limited resources, we could hire some retail expertise, because as I look at surrounding cities, they seem to have been pretty, particularly south. So if you look at Sunnyvale and Cupertino and Los Altos, a little bit more methodical about, they've had a lot of retail development there. And I think that they've been able somehow to think about the mix that they want and creating that in a way that we haven't, possibly because of lack of resources. Not quite sure. And so I think that having somebody with actual retail expertise kind of saying, this is how the mix of things interacts. And how, I had asked the applicant in Town and Country, I sort of said, well, how much foot traffic are you expecting to drive here? What are the foot traffic numbers that you would expect to see in this slice of retail versus a different slice of retail. And that's the kind of information that we need in order to be able to make decisions that might really have long-ranging impacts on things that are really important to residents. Like that's an example of something that really affects our quality of life. And so we just didn't, none of us are retail experts. I mean, that would be a great thing to have on the PTC if the city can't have it. So that's an example of some of the data that I'd be interested in.
Thank you.
Greer.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, Bryna. Thanks for reapplying and for your service. You sure don't sound like a commissioner who has only been serving for a couple of months. So glad to see that you are reapplying. And I'm curious, where now that you've had a few months of experience, where do you kind of see yourself? What role do you kind of see yourself fulfilling on the commission? Because you already kind of talked about the need of some diversity of experience on the commission. So what role do you see yourself fulfilling, and kind of what are you moving forward? How do you see yourself kind of growing as a commissioner to continue to contribute in meaningful ways?
Yeah, so right now where I speak, like I felt like I was really able to contribute in a couple of different places. So one, I'm a very analytical and strategic person. So both the detail, like I really love numbers. I'm kind of a geek about that. But I also can think big picture, and I've been told repeatedly, oh, that's a like amazing combination to have. But I do think that that is helpful because I can look at those traffic. There was I can't remember the term, but like wait times at a traffic light, and I can look at that and zero in and say, what's going on with this number? It doesn't make sense, right? And ask those questions, but also sort of take that and say, okay, well then that translates into this implication. So for example, like the bike path, I think we came out with a pretty good solution for the East Meadow situation where we don't need a bike path fully protected all the way along because certain sections have less traffic as evidenced by the car counts, right? And the pedestrian and bike counts. So I think that's one place where I kind of my personal strengths play well because nobody else quite looks at data that's the same way as I do on the commission right now. But then kind of contextually, because of I think as a younger person with a family, with and lots of community connections with other families, that's just a particular lens through which I look at things, and that's valuable. And then finally, I'm hoping to use this a little bit more, but I am plugged into our Asian community because by virtue of the school, the elementary school that we attended, as well as just people come up to me and talk to me and expect my Mandarin to be a lot better than it is. But I am plugged in there, and I'm hoping that going forward, I can, pull in a little bit more of that. Also, I am just so, like I said, so floored by people's understanding of code, and hope that by the time I'm still looking every other word up in the packets, but hoping that I will just become a lot more facile with that going forward. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. I don't see any more questions. If you want to if you have any closing statements, we'll end the interview.
So as I said before, I'm really committed to this city. And my kids are older, and that's partly why I've kind of said, oh, let's see what else I can plug into. And I am really passionate about planning and transportation, particularly transportation, which again, I think is not necessarily, everybody cares about it, but that's the angle that I come at it from. So I just think that what the PDC does is just so central to our quality of life. And I really want to help keep Palo Alto great, a great place to live for everybody, like the diversity of people that live here. So I just hope that being connected to the communities that I am, like I talked about, that will just add a little bit of a different facet onto the way that we look at things. So just thank you for taking the time to let me speak tonight, and I hope I have the opportunity to continue, and happy Thanksgiving.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for applying again. And with that, I think we've gone through our entire agenda. So meeting adjourned. Thank you all for being here tonight.